All right, so let's jump into this and create this pyro advection shockwave effect. So starting off with my file, I'm going to turn off this camera, and then we're going to create a simple mesh circle, and we're going to add a particle sim to that to start off. So what we have to do is create a particle sim where our fluid sim is going to happen to create our fire. So let's start setting up this real quick. So here I'm going to set this to about 25, and then we're going to set the start to 1, set the end to 1. Lifetime, we'll go about 64 frames total. So I'm going to go down here to the end, set that to 64 frames, then hover over here, just hit home to expand that area. And then next we'll start just letting this play back and forth. And then we're going to go to mission, source, set this to vertices so that the particles emit from the vertices. And then I'm going to leave it on random order. And then turn off the normal. Actually, we are going to turn this on. So we're going to set this to about 16. We want these particles to shoot out pretty fast to create a lot of velocity. Next, we're going to go down to, let's see, viewport display. So as I always like to do, I like to see the velocity and then shrink the size of my particles down. They're way too big to just look this way. So you can see that. And then go down here to force field weights, turn gravity down to 0. And then I'm gonna leave the emitter on. So we got that set up. Okay, so next thing we need to do is add our fire. So we're gonna go here to quick effects and set it to quick smoke. And then we need to change the dimensions of this. So I'm gonna change this and shrink it down here. Oops. I'm gonna set it to wireframe first. And then we're gonna bring this down. Bring this up just a tad. Then go here from the top and then just create enough space for the fire. So we just want about that much. Okay, so then we got that. And then now it's time to set up our fire. So if we click the original circle, now I'm gonna just organize my layers real quick before I do that. So I'm gonna move this to fluid sim. And then if we click on the circle and go to physics tab, I'm gonna set my flow source. So we're gonna set this to particle system and particle system so that it's reading our particle system for our smoke sim. And then we're gonna change the smoke to fire. So I want fire only, okay? Next thing we want to do is create a lot of velocity into our fire to push these final particles when we get to that end point. So I'm gonna turn on initial velocity, and then I'm gonna set this to about 16. So as you can see, there's so much velocity happening where the fireball is being pushed out, right? It doesn't have that much of a tail anymore, which I like. So from there, now we got a good starting point, and I'm gonna try adding more fuel just for kicks to see what we get. It's a little too much, so I'm gonna change it back to 1. All right, so we're gonna set it to 1, and then now we're just gonna go over our domain and then check our domain settings. And then I'm going to set the cache to 64, just like we have in our timeline. Close that out. And then we're going to look at turning up the resolution and see what our sim looks like now. So it's going to look a little different. So what I want to do is add more fuel to it, because now I'm getting more resolution into this. And now I can actually see what's happening. So I'm going to turn my resolution up to 2 and see what we get now. And as you can see, fire burns a little hotter. Okay, so we're going to increase the size now. So set this to 2. Let's watch it play over again. And we're going to increase the velocity to 32 now. Not 3, 32. All right, so we're getting that same look, but we just got more detail in our sim. Might be a little too much fuel, matter of fact. Yeah, it's too much. All right, so let's pull back on the fuel, 1.5. Let's run the simulation again. And we're getting to a good starting point. So this I can live with. Okay. Let me look at it from the side to make sure we're not cutting off our sim. We might have to expand our domain a little bit. So let's run it one more time. I think that works. Okay. Yeah, that works. One thing I want to do is turn on dissolve real quick in the domain because there's too much smoke. So let's turn on, let's see where's dissolve at. No, actually I want to turn off the smoke. I'm going to turn it off a little bit. So we're going to set this to 0.1 so there's not so much smoke after the tail. Yeah, much better. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that. So now we got the sim. Okay. Next thing we want to do is that we need to cache out our simulation. So I'm going to pause it and then I'm going to go to cache and then I'm going to set this to all from replay. And I'm going to set this to a location. So as I have mentioned before, I don't like to store my fluid sims or cache data in my main hard drive. I like to put it on an external hard drive. You can't see what I'm doing right now, but what I was doing is setting a location for my fluid sim. So you can see that the path has changed right here. And now I have it on my external hard drive to cache this out because most times my cache data is over a gigabyte. All right, so after we set those settings, I'm going to go down here to advanced and my compression, I'm going to set it to none and then set the precision volume to full. When I was doing some tests, I noticed that my sim was not looking the same after I cached it out. But once I changed the compression and precision, I got a 1-to-1 match on my simulation once I cached it out. So that's the reason I'm changing that. All right. So after that, I'm just going to hit bake and it's going to bake pretty fast. So we'll watch it bake real quick. It's just running through. It's baking all the data and then we can just play it back over and over again as many times as we want without it slowing down. All right, so it's baked. Now we can play it back. And this is our cache data. So now it's stored into a location as a file. So now we're ready to run our last part. So I'm going to click on here. This is where I'm going to make my new torus. So we're going to make a torus. And I'm going to change the settings over here. So I'm going to expand it out a little bit past the ring. And then I'm going to put the size to a 2, maybe 1.5, pretty thin, and then set this to about 28. So let me rewind this real quick. Okay. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Okay. So I got that torus set, and then we're going to make a new particle simulation. So we're going to set this to particles, and then while I have the torus selected, and then add a new one. And then I'm going to just name this particle Advection, like that. And I'm going to starting on, say, 128,000. And then I'm going to set the C to 1 just for kicks. And then set this to 1 so that all the particles start from the beginning. Lifetime, set that to 64. Basis, yes. Random, random distribution, cool. Even distribution, cool. We don't need a cache yet. Velocity, I want that set to 0 so that the particles are not moving. Physics, we'll leave that there. Viewport display, set velocity, rendered. We'll leave that for now. I don't want to show the emitter. Set this to 0.2. And then what else? Gravity, that's right. Field weights, set this to 0. Children, viewport display. Okay, so now we're good. And then next thing, so if I hit play, nothing happens, okay? So what we got to do next is we got to create a force field. And we go to fluid flow. And now if I hit play, the particles should move a tad. Okay, so no, they're not moving. Missed one thing. So we need to set our domain object. So we need to pick our domain that the fluid sim is happening in. So smoke domain, boom. Now we're ready. So if we should see something happen now. Okay. So now we got something happening, right? So what we have to do now is play with the settings of our fluid field. So one thing I want to look at first before doing that is I want to make sure this is aligned correctly. Okay. So now I want to play with my fluid field settings. So what's happening is when I run the sim, the fire is pushing these particles out. Okay. So now we just need to tweak our settings so that the fire is pushing out these particles the way we want, right? So now if I start messing around with this, I'm going to go something extreme like 16 to see if that's the magic number. So now you can see a big difference, right? See how it's pushing the particles out now? So let's try 0.1 for the flow. Okay, so it's a little too crazy. I'm going to try 2, go the opposite end of the spectrum. Okay, so now this is the magic part. Okay, so like if we look at it from a top-down view, look at the kind of pattern we're getting now. Okay, and so now the magic part is to turn off the flu sim, right? So I'm turning off, I have my layers here, but I'm turning off all the fluid sim. So I don't want to see these elements, right? And so if I hit play again, now we're getting some cool stuff happening, right? So let me scrub through it real quick. So you can see a little shockwave even going through the whole thing too. And then the last part, you know, all this turbulence happening. And this is all natural stuff just happening because of the fluid sim. We're not using any kind of force fields or stuff. The only thing we're using is the fluid field to have the particles inherit, to have the particles affect, no, I'm sorry, to have the fluid sim affect the particles. All right. So this is what we're getting now. Really cool. All right. So if I like these settings, say I wanted to move forward with these settings, right? So I can say now I'm going to select my torus, go over here, make sure I have show emitter off, and then let's see this, and then turn off the emitter here too. Let's just play the back again, make sure we got what we need. Okay, that's good. And I could turn up the amount of particles. So I can say, okay, let's turn up to 256,000. Okay. And then I hit play again. See what I get now. Right. So I like this. This is a good start. And now I can start setting up my camera and lighting and creating variations of it. Right. So I can render this as an animation. And let's say I wanted to create another variation. So I could go back to my fluid field and then say, okay, well, let me try 24 and then changing this to like 4. What happens? Right. So now I've created a different variation of the whole sim. Okay. Obviously it doesn't work, kind of explodes. So we got to tweak it again to see what happens. Okay. So that doesn't work. Okay. Maybe this is too high. So I'll turn this down to 12. Okay. So now we're getting something different, right? And then I could say, okay, well, let me try turning this to 4. All right. It's probably going to be a little tighter this time, kind of like paint. So that's really cool. Right. I like that. And then I can say, oh, well, let me try what happens. What happens if I change it to 1? It's going to be a little looser probably, right? See? So we can create a lot of different variations just from this one setup. All right. So we're going to leave it at 2. See what 2 looks like. What do I want to render? Yeah, we'll render this. Okay. So we'll leave it at that. And then I can go back to my torus and then click on my particle tab. And then we're going to bake it. So we're going to cache it, matter of fact. So I'm going to save this file real quick. You guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just saving my file out real quick so I can cache this out since I haven't saved this file since starting the video. And then I'm just going to hit bake real quick so this information is saved and I don't have to keep replaying it back and over. So I'm going to hit bake. It's baking real quick. And then we're going to set up our lighting. So we're going to set up our lighting, camera, and we got to put in a sphere for our particles to reference to. So this is where things kind of slow down with our viewport. I wish there was a way in Blender where I could reference an object, but not have my viewport slow down when I'm doing these preview renders so that it's just still reading it as points. But when I render in the viewport, it just renders the geometry. But for some reason, I can't do that, which sucks. Okay, so I got it cached out like that. We'll stop the frame right there. And I'm going to create a sphere. Boom. Nope, not that. That's not what I want. I want a UV sphere. So UV sphere. And then we'll just set this off to the side. So I'll move it way over here, further down. Just like that. I'm gonna make sure this is off. So when I start rendering, yeah, I want that off. No, that one's fine. I want this off. Okay. I'm going to create this sphere one more time because I wanted to change the settings. You know, I can change the settings one time. So I'm going to set this to 12 for the segments. And then what else can we change? 12. Set this to 8. Yeah, that works. All right. Got that set. Move this way over here. And then we'll click on the particle sim again. And then I'm going to go over here, viewport display, rendered, render. We're going to set this to object and sphere. So now we got our sphere set. Okay. And then we're going to go back over here, open both these tabs. And then instead of setting the viewport to render for now, because we got to set up our camera, I'm going to set it back to point. And then when I'm ready to render, then I will set that back. All right. So now I'm going to turn my camera back on, select that. And we're just going to move it straight up, press N, set this to 0 so that my camera's pointing down. And then I want to set my focal length to something more long so that I kind of compress things together. And then pull this up, press N, press T, split the viewport just like that. And then press 0, just format the shot to a square shot. And then we're going to zoom in, control tilde to get rid of that. And then scroll, press that, get rid of that. All right. Let's pull back just a tad bit more so we can see more information around. Don't want to see that hitting the walls though. Just like there. Okay. And then I want to add my light in because I know this viewport's going to slow down once I change it back to geometry. And then let me turn this back on here. Yeah. What is this? X-ray. I don't want X-ray mode on. Okay. So I want to move my light out of camera just like that, just above right there. And then we're going to rotate -90. And we're going to scale this light way up, just as big as the particle system. And then kind of move it upwards. And then I already know we probably have to turn it up to like 1024. All right. And then let's do a test render. So we're going to set it to render. I'm going to turn that off, which is the show overlays, because I just want a clean viewport for my render. And then I'm going to select the torus particle tab. And we're going to set this back to geometry rendered. Okay, so here we go. See what we get. Okay, so there it is. So now we need to play with some settings. So first off, I want to set the scale randomness to 1 so that it randomizes the scale of the particles throughout this whole thing. And then I would probably want to set this to like 0.025 for this size. Scale it down. Let's go 0.03. Cool. And then we're going to go over here. And then we're going to go down to film, turn off transparent. So that's just a black background. And then now we need to add a material. So if I select my sphere, just like that, go to shader, press N, make a new material. And then I'm going to go back to my torus real quick just to speed things up so that we're not working in a slow viewport. I'm going to turn this back to point just so I can work real quick. So this is going to disappear. All right. Select the sphere again. We got the material. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to go color ramp. And then we're going to connect that here. And then we're going to do another one, particle info. And what this is going to do I showed this in my previous video. So since we're working with particles, right? That particle, remember how I always set my velocity to show in the viewport so I can know how fast things are going? So we can take that info and use it as information for our colors. So since these particles have velocity information, I can take this velocity point right here and plug it in to the color ramp. So now I'll do some extreme colors. I could set this to red and then set this to, should we go blue or green? Which one looks better? We'll go green. All right. So if I do that, and I'm going to change it to like B-spline, just so it's a smoother gradation, and then move these points inward a little bit like that. All right. So if I render again, right, go over here to Torus and change this to rendered, we will see that that color information is being fed in through the velocity channel. So we got to make some tweaks so that it shows up better. Let me just change my denoise, turn my denoise off so that we're getting better feedback. Turn this off. There we go. All right. So if I take this green and pull it over more, we can start to see that green feeds into the velocity channel more. Maybe. Let's pull back on the red. There we go. So we can see the yellows, pull the green over more. So things are running kind of slow. Geometry. So there you go. So now you can see that green is feeding into the shot now, right? So that's how we can do that. So got some simple light set up. We can look at a different frame too, which is nice because we've already cached it out. So I can go 15. So let's go back a couple frames. Right, so there's another one, go 10, right? And the reason it's turning green is because of that velocity information, right? 5, see that? And then like 35, let's go further, 45, cool. So I personally would rebake this again. So like I would go in and add more particles, and I'd probably double it to like 512,000. But for now, I'm gonna leave it as is before I do that. But so as you can see, it's pretty simple workflow to do this, and you can create a lot of different variations too. So what else can we do? Oh, so just to finish the look dev part of this, I'm going to change my colors. No, I'm going to change, that's right. I'm going to add my LUT. So I'm going to use this new add-on I got, Final LUT. And then I'm going to use this one here. This is Afka Futura 200. That's what LUT I'm using. So I just added the LUT. And then I can also work on the compositor. And move this back just like that. Maybe add some dispersion, plug that in, go 0.01, turn on fit also. So just on these edges, I'm getting a little bit of aberration happening here. And then also glare, and add that in the shot. I'll do that on this end. So getting some glare. I'm going to set it to fog glow. Very subtle. I don't need a lot. We don't want to overdo it. So I'm fine with it just being so subtle. I know you can't really tell the difference, but it's there. I can see it. Very subtle, but I like that. All right. So let's go like frame 30 again. And then I'm going to change the colors. All right, so shader editor, and then select the sphere. All right, so let's work with some color. I'm gonna change this red. I'm gonna change it to like this color right about here. Yeah. And then I'm gonna take the green, same thing. I'm gonna go inward. Yep, Doesn't need to be crazy. Very subtle look. Let's see. Go in further. Yeah. Yeah, just very subtle look. I don't need to do anything crazy. You know, if I want to make some more edits to it, I can add a hue, saturation, take the value down on it, probably 0.8 starting out, and I could probably desaturate it too myself. Subtle movements to it. Yeah, see, I like that. Then I can turn my light down a little bit. Oh, where's my light at? I need to move this to the proper layer. Collection. Just making this for some reason. Delete that. Then I'm gonna go back to my light. And then I want to turn on this. So this is Light Wrangler. If you're seeing these extra options and wondering why they're there, it's because of Light Wrangler. That's what it is. So I'm just getting a warmer light. So by default in Light Wrangler, the scrim light is warm, which I like. So I'm going to leave that on by default. So that's there. And then I'm going to turn the power down. Go half first. See what we get. Yeah. So these areas were just getting a little too hot here. I was paying attention to these areas. And I like this very nice fall off on the image. So, okay. Now, in the preview video that I showed you guys at the beginning of this, my lighting was a lot different. And I can show you guys how I got that look also. So, being that this scene is very heavy, I'm going to take a different method of approaching it. In the animation that I played at the beginning of the video, I actually exported the particles as Alembic meshes due to this stuff being so heavy. However, what you do lose is the particle info. So you cannot color by particle info no more. You can just get solid colors. You could do some UVs, playing around with that maybe, but I haven't not really figured that out yet. But that's the balance you have to play with. It's like, do I keep these as particles and work with a heavy scene, or do I export it out as an Alembic mesh, and then from there I can bring the Alembic in and I have a really light scene to work with. And it's nice because you're able to work a lot faster. But what I'll do to get the light look that I had in the animation, I'll show you guys how to do that working in a heavy scene. All right, so we're gonna go and turn off, yeah, we're gonna turn this off. So I'm gonna change this to points, and they're gonna disappear. All right, cool. And I'm gonna make a plane to fill this shot. So I'm gonna scale this up. So now I got a point of reference for my lights. Just like that. So what I could do now, just to make sure it's aligned properly. That's good. And then I want to put this in my light layer, since I'm just doing some light referencing. Turn this off so my viewport's maybe faster, hopefully. Nope. Oh well. Okay, so all I'm going to do is this. So this is what I did. I turned it 45 degrees. Up other way. So 45, negative 45, just like that. And then on my light settings, I turn the spread down to 0. So we're just going to turn this to 0. Oh, come on. Set that to 0. Ah, the thing's running kind of slow still. See, I got all these particles in the scene. That's why. Is it going to work? Nope. 0. Here we go. All right, there we go. So I got this set to 0. Let's see if I bring it up. Let's set it to 1 now. What happened to my light? There we go. Okay, so now we got a light streak. Okay. And then I'm going to change the size of it too. So let's shrink it down. Just like that. And then I'm going to pull it up so we can watch the light wash across the surface. Just like that. All right. And then I'm just going to turn the spread up. So this is all I did to create that look. So I had some light spread on it too. Let's go 16. Yeah. So that'll work. All right. So that's all I did. And then I'm just going to turn off this plane and turn my particles back on to see what it looks like now. So we're going to turn on particle sim and then select the torus again, particle, and then change here in the viewport display to display as rendered. There we go. So now we should just see that light cone come through the shot. All right. So now my lights are just a little too hot, and I can now change the intensity down to something that works. All right, so I select my light, just waiting for it to happen. Everything's moving very slow right now. And then we're going to turn this light intensity down. So I'm thinking like 128. And it's going to update. All right, so let's turn it down some more. I'm going to go down 32. Like that. Cool. See? And that's it. That's how I got that look. Just playing with the cone, the light, what was it called again? The spread of the light. That's right. The beam shape. So that's what I did to get that look. And that's what I did in the animation. And then what I also did was I rendered out a lot of different variations of it too. So what my process was, get a variation through the particles, export a limbic mesh. Then I go back and rinse and repeat, get a different variation by changing the fluid field settings, and then export out another limbic, and then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then I had like 8 variations, and then I imported them all into, no, I didn't even import them all. So what I did was I imported one, and then I was just changing the file path in the limbic settings. So if you go to your modifier tab, over here, is my modifier tab here? No, it's not showing up right now. But in your modifier tab right here, your limbic comes in as a modifier, and you can change the path. So I was just had like iteration 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so I was just changing 1 to 2, render that out, change 2 to 3, render that out, and so on. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed learning this process myself. I'm doing a lot more experimenting, figuring other things out I can do with this method. I got more videos coming down the road. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.